Welcome to the First Word Podcast. This is Jacob
and Mike,
and we have a special episode or two coming up, and it is something we are both passionate about, and that I think everybody should be passionate about within the church. But we would like to discuss student ministry.
Yes. Students.
So student ministry, all it is ordering pizza and babysitting. Right, Mike?
Yep. Sleep deprivation is definitely in there too.
Yep. Well, so that's what a lot of people think student ministry is, but we know it's not that. It is far from that. We want to clear up some misperceptions. We want to share some stories. We want to talk about our vision and how we see student ministry and why it's important. So there's a lot to talk about.
Let's get into it.
All right.
I'm excited.
So I've been a student pastor for 15 years. I was called to ministry at the age of 16. And from that moment, I knew I was called to student ministry. God changes your callings over time. And that's when he led me to be a senior pastor. It was amidst change in calling and processing through that. But from the time I was 16, I felt called to student ministry specifically, and so I devoted myself to that. And
how did that happen, Jacob? Like, what was it about the calling that was so clear that led you specifically to students?
You know, that's a good question. It was, to be honest, my student pastor.
Really? The
impact he had on me. The tight bond I had with other students in my student ministry, and how I was growing. I had friends I was so close to in student ministry. None of us were alike. And it just was a wonderful, beautiful picture of the kingdom. And it changed me. And my student pastor poured so much into me, and I wanted to be like that.
That's awesome.
Have an impact like that, yeah. And so, went off to college. I was involved in middle school ministry while in college, and then went off to, actually my senior year of college, I got my first student pastor job by the grace of God. I don't know why they hired me, but I'm grateful for that time. And then I was able to get my education experience at the same time and keep serving students. I've served in student pastor in three different churches.
Nice.
And I have so many students I still love to this day. And so, so tell me a little about your student ministry background, calling, all that, Mike.
Yeah, so I thought I was going in the military. That's what I wanted to do in high school. And then God slammed that door shut. And so when I didn't know what to do with my life, because to be very blunt, I was just throwing it away for worldly things. I was at this Bible college, and that's where God really got a hold of me. And I repented of, just the way that I was living. I mean, God had so gripped my heart there on the first night that I realized that, it's time to like really own my faith. Like I believed in Jesus when I was 13, but it was there when I was 18 years old at this Bible college that I realized, like, I need to follow Jesus, like, every day. Every decision, everything, like full surrender was then. And so throughout that year, I was just praying, like, Lord, what do you want for me? What do you want for my life? I was trying to figure a bunch of stuff out, not only with these theological classes that I had and these in-depth courses. I was just
while being a baby Christian, right?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, yes. Yeah, I was, and I didn't know. I didn't have a clue. All these other kids are like, just excelling, and I'm trying to figure out like study methods. How do you actually study and take this stuff seriously? And like I'm learning about God and things, and so like also learning other things, trying to figure out how to tie a tie. And because at this college you had to do that, and so
it was that kind of college.
It was. So I mean, it wasn't. They were more lax in some, but like that was extreme for me. So
I don't see you wear a tie now.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. So, but it was during that I'm like, Lord, how is this going to translate to like an actual job. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but I'm like, I didn't, because everything I thought before that was like, and I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, but all my friends went to these big universities and stuff, and that's kind of what I had in my mind, but I totally missed the plan of God for my life at that point, until as I was praying through it, like, Lord, what do you want for me? I remember a professor saying there's only two things in this universe that last forever. It's the Word of God and it's the souls of men. And so why not invest your life into something that lasts forever?
That's good.
In that moment, I knew that was for me. I knew that the Spirit was so active in me, like within me, and he just confirmed that. So I knew my life was going to be to the ministry of the Word and to investing in people's souls and winning souls.
So how did he get you into student ministry? I know, students have souls too.
They do.
Sometimes you wonder.
Facts. So at that college, every summer, it's a Bible college throughout, the other 3 seasons, but in the summer, it's a summer camp for teenagers.
Okay.
And so they put me as a counselor there, and I got to be around like thousands of students every single summer. And that was really when I realized, like, not only do I enjoy being around them, but like I was connecting with them.
Yeah.
And I was learning from them. Like they were an inspiration to me, but I was also able to help them along with things that I was learning, and it was just kind of a seamless thing at that point. And so that was really how I got started in that in student ministry. And I've always appreciated teenagers ever since then. Again, most days, but that's people in general, right? So
you love them when they're asleep.
That's
right.
it. But yeah, that was kind of my journey there. And so from there, I've had a lot of like odd jobs. Worked for a hospital. I've worked for Little Debbie. I've worked for all these different things until you get your first real job, as God has called you, or according to your calling. And that happened in Savannah, Georgia.
Nice.
My wife Christian and I were in Chattanooga. We lived in Chattanooga at this time, and a buddy of mine from college made me aware of this opportunity in Savannah, and we'd never been there. We didn't know a single soul there. I was making good money at this hospital I was working at, but I was like, this is so weird and out of place, like for this to be mentioned, but let's pray about it just in case God's hands in it. Let's just start praying about it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll mention it to Christian, and I did, and she thought it was as weird as I did, but we're like, could this be it? And we started going through the process, and sure enough, like it was a clear calling for the Lord to just uproot from where we were in Chattanooga and go there, and that was my first job as a youth pastor, and that was in 2017.
And you haven't run away from student ministry?
Nope. So, been ran off, but I can't run away from... No, I'm just playing.
Yeah.
So,
well, no.
But,
not here. Not run off here.
That's it, man. We got a great group here, too. So I'm excited to be serving here now. Been here 3 years. And, man... special group.
Man, 3 years. That is like tenure for a student pastor.
There's some milestones there that we passed.
So we've both been in student ministry a while. We've seen some ups and downs. I saw a big change in student ministry now that I think about it. Like 5 or 10 years in, somewhere in between there, students changed. A lot of it had to do with social media and how that's being used. Students stopped wanting to have as much fun, but I think it's because they were afraid things would be captured on video and picture, and it's like
way more reserved.
Yeah. But the culture changes so often, and usually the forefront of changing culture is from younger people, and so you're constantly having to reevaluate and restructure and learn lingo. You're pretty good at that, Mike, with the lingo.
I don't know.
I'm not. I've tried to get them to teach me.
I pick up things from here and there, but I wouldn't say I'm fluent.
Students were trying to teach me how to use the word bet, and I could not figure it out. Okay. I would use it wrong all the time.
There's another word for that, chuggy.
Okay, see, I don't even know what that is.
That's where you're trying to be hip and trendy, but it's not.
Oh, that's what I was being?
I don't know if they called you that. Hopefully not, but apparently.
Bet. See,
no. In context.
Was it?
I think so.
Okay, we'll ask a student and see.
We will.
So we've been in student ministry a while. Do you want me to share first or you about how do you view student ministry?
Man, you go for it.
Okay. So here's kind of over the years, my kind of mission statement for student ministry. Student ministry exists to give students the tools and desire to become mature Christian adults. Okay, there's a lot to that. Mm-hmm. We're building something for the future. We can't expect them to be mature Christian adults at this stage in their life. We can expect them to grow in understanding and knowledge and faithfulness and all that's required for that, but they're not mature people. I mean, their prefrontal lobe is not fully developed.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm using big words. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, developmentally,
the hormones are out of whack.
Yeah, stuff's going on there.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And so you got to recognize that,
Mm-hmm.
we're seeking to give students tools and desire to become mature Christian adults. So tools, you teach them the Bible, you teach them how to study the Bible, you teach them how to apply it, you teach them evangelism, you teach them all these tools needed to live out their faith in the future. But if you just have tools and you don't have desire, they're going to go off to college. There's a sad statistic that's been around for decades. Around 70% of students, between 60 and 70% of students, once they leave, graduate high school and they move off, they drop out of church. Between 60 and 70%. And it really hasn't changed that much over decades. We can discuss some of why that is, but one reason, if they don't have the desire to grow in their faith, to plug in, to be a part of the church, the work of the church, they're not going to, even if they have all the tools. So I think a lot of churches or student ministries do one well and not both. I've never fully figured out how. The question, I think, is how do you instill desire in somebody, which is difficult. I think we do well teaching. You got Sunday school, you got Wednesday nights, you got small groups, but how do you instill within somebody I desire to live this out?
That's a great question, and I honestly I don't know that you can. I mean, you can do, like, that desire has to organically come from within that person, right? So, but definitely provide those opportunities. Definitely equip them as much as you possibly can.
So opportunities, I think that's a good word. You're inspired when you see other people's lives change, or you're a part of that. You're an active part of ministry, or maybe you have leadership responsibility, and you are a part of the reason you've seen someone's life turn around. That'll inspire you and give you desire to continue on.
Definitely. I mean, they get a taste of that.
Yeah.
It's contagious a lot of times.
Yeah. And you go on mission trips, or you do service projects, and getting beyond yourself, I think, can help instill that desire. We become so me-focused. Our culture's that way.
Yeah.
The church is that way. Adults in the church are that way. But especially, kids and students, that's something that's hard to grow out of. So the more we can get people outside of themselves, period, but especially students, I think it can help instill that desire.
I remember, and this even goes back to like where my passion comes from for students and my calling, I guess. I mean, God put me in those opportunities, but I remember as a middle school guy, like when I was in middle school, I remember so my parents split when I was 11. So I came from a broken, very dysfunctional home, and I didn't have a lot of male role models. I didn't have any real good ones, honestly. And so I had a youth pastor, but we were, this huge church down in Tampa, or south of Tampa. But I just remembered, man, if there was more like mentoring going on, if I had more, like, what does it actually mean to make decisions, to be a man, you know?
See that modeled and
Yeah. And I didn't have that. Our youth group was a fun place. You know, you go there and play the games and mingle. And for the girls, I mean, that was a motivation for me, you know, at that time. But like, if I really had somebody in my life, I believe this, like like a guy in my life, a man that could teach me, godly ways, how to walk in righteousness, how to pursue the Lord and study the Bible and the meaning and the value of that. But also do life with me and say, hey, you know, what's going on here in school? Why are you getting in trouble? Or, you know, there's a better way.
Yeah.
I think that would have mattered a lot for me. And so that drives me to hopefully shepherd our young guys.
Statistics show that, Mike. So that 60 to 70% dropout rate, one of the remedies to that, at the top of the list, one of the remedies is students who had a relationship with at least one adult within the church that's not their parent or the student pastor.
Wow.
Didn't drop out of church.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, it's relationships.
Yeah.
You know, that community is so big, and even just having that discipleship beyond community in general, you have a more one-on-one. You have a more inside scoop on life from somebody who's further along than you, more mature than you, and can show you and bring you along.
And that they can tell genuinely cares and not paid to be there.
Yes. And that's one thing I realized, even like with volunteers, sometimes a misconception is, well, I have to dress a certain kind of way or talk a certain way to be effective with teenagers. And I found that's just so not true. Like if you show up in their life and you care about them, that's it.
Yeah.
The rest does not matter. That's all students want. Is somebody that genuinely cares about them.
And they need that.
Yeah.
I think the church should be, I think adult Bible studies like on Wednesday should be full, but I think there should be more people plugged into children's ministry and student ministry on those nights than are seeking to feed themselves.
Yeah.
And they'll be fed. You're fed and grow while serving, you know. But there's a big need there. I've always seen in every student ministry I've been a part of, we've had adult volunteers, but not enough. It's always the same handful. And oftentimes, you know, you're in a in-between time of youth pastors, and a lot of adults get involved to keep the ministry going. But as soon as the youth pastor comes in, it's, I can be done now. And
I know. And
you know,
honestly,
pull away. And
I expected that when I came here.
Yeah.
I expected that to be the exact case. Thankfully, it has not been.
Awesome.
We have had an amazing group of volunteers, even before I got here.
Yeah.
Like the transition from the last student pastor to me, it was a band of volunteers that loved on our kids and was there for our students, and just taught them, led them, showed up for them. There's a difference between just holding something together and continuing to do it. And there wasn't a really huge drop off. I mean, maybe in content and like rhythms and stuff, obviously, because things change, you know. But as far as the core group of them, even beyond that, I mean, most of them are still serving.
Yeah,
now,
that's
which
awesome.
Is such a testament to them.
Every church needs to pour into children and students.
I agree, and so our student ministry volunteers have been such a blessing and so refreshing, because that tells me exactly where their hearts are.
Yeah.
And, you know, they weren't just doing it because they were obligated to be there,
Right.
and, you know, there was a need and they were kind of guilted into doing that, which is never a great motivator. But they wanted to be
That's
there.
awesome.
And they continue to prove that. And that is so valuable to me and such an encouragement to me.
Yeah. So one other thing I think about how I view student ministry, it goes along with what I said, given tools and desires to become mature Christian adults. But student ministry is different than the rest of the church ministry. I mean, similar to children's ministry in the sense that students cycle through. They don't stay with you.
Yeah.
They come through and move on. So you got middle school, high school, and then they're off. And so I've come to picture it as a student comes into my student ministry with an empty backpack. What am I going to put in that backpack that they're going to carry with them when they leave? And so try to seek intentionality with what are we learning? What are we pursuing? What are we showing as priorities? Stuff like that. Yeah. And
that's a good thought and a good analogy too. A Survivor show comes to mind where they can only get 10 items, you know, and then they're sent out there.
What do you put in? So like another thing I would always structure, I always played games and stuff, but I tried to keep things also looking like church and feeling like big church in a sense, partially because I think student ministries have gone wrong in the past being, I don't want to say it, but too fun.
Yeah.
In the sense of let's just have all fun and games and a little discipleship maybe, you know, a little devotional.
Like that was just a throwaway thing to do during that time.
Yeah. And then they go off and graduate, and now all they have is big church. And oh, this is boring. I don't, you know.
I'm out.
I'm out, yeah. And so they do, and they have for decades. And so people get used to what you feed them, you know, and what you hook people with is what you have to keep them with. And so a lot of student ministries, hey, let's entertain, let's have big glitz and glamour, let's have huge flashy everything, let's attract a big crowd.
Yeah.
But what happens when all that goes away?
Yeah. I'm always leery about things that grow really fast.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes people expect quick growth, particularly in student ministry.
You have this special event, and that'll do it. And,
And how are you not up to 50 kids yet, or whatever it is? I mean, nobody's asked me that personally, but I
Mike,
my buddies.
Why? No, I'm not asking.
There are incentives that we have for that, but
if we reach 75, I am shaving my head.
He is, and I will shave my beard for 100. But you know, we'll get there.
I know this is a podcast, and if you don't know Mike, he does have an epic beard. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I don't want to really lose it. So, but I do want
for the kingdom,
students.
Mike.
That's it.
It's for the kids.
Where was I even going with that?
Slow growth.
Oh yes, thank you. Yeah, a lot. I mean, that's so true because a lot of student ministries are, as they say, an inch deep and a mile wide.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
But so how I view student ministry, and I don't have an official thorough definition because I try to keep things simple for myself, but for kids too. Yeah. But you got to grow deep before you can grow wide. How I view it is a growing up of their faith, but also a trickle down. So like as you equip them, as you train them to do the work of the ministry, like we have a saying, kind of our tagline, if you will, it has been take the next step and own your faith. Always taking a next step in their faith, whatever that is. Maybe that's baptism. Maybe that's literally just coming 2 weeks in a row. I mean, for some, that's a challenge. And so journeys are different. Everybody are on different paths, but trying to point them to taking that next step to own their faith. And so how we define owning their faith is when they start to share Jesus with others, and they start to bring other students along, and they start to show other students what they're doing as far as, you know, on a serve team, we have a tech team, we have a worship team. When they start bringing students along.
When they start, I would see it also as when they start coming on their own.
Yes.
Like I've noticed throughout each student ministry I've been in, once students start to drive themselves, I see a lot of them drop off because their parents.
That's been huge for us.
Absolutely. Their parents aren't bringing them anymore. They're not forced to come always, which parents, we'll have a whole nother session about that because that's the worst thing you can do to your kids. I don't feel like going to church, oh, well, you don't have to. You wouldn't say that about broccoli or their sports practice, but when it comes to God,
probably do.
I could get on a soapbox, but we'll do that another time. We'll do that another time. So owning your faith, that is key. Absolutely.
And just what that looks like is bringing others along. But it's not just bringing them to church. It's like, hey, you need to be owning that out in your community.
Yeah.
Owning that at school. I see our students doing that, by the way. We had FCA yesterday morning, and one of our students, two of them actually, have started a prayer wall in the girls' bathroom at Portland High School.
That's awesome.
And so they're taking sticky notes and they're putting prayer requests on there. They got approval from the principal, who said, hey, if bad stuff is starting to be written on there, then you can't do it anymore. But they're optimistic about it.
Yeah.
They're trying to take it off.
Hey, living out their faith.
That's it.
Publicly.
And so it has been so cool to see them do that. And man, I celebrate that. I love trying to find ways to celebrate these things.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal. So we have students that are owning their faith.
That's awesome.
And, it's been really cool. So that's how I see it. So growing them up, but also the trickle down as far as like high schoolers. I'm a firm believer that they need to be mentoring middle schoolers, taking middle schoolers under their wing.
Yep,
because
absolutely.
Like right now we're combined we're 6 to 12.
Yep. That's how all mine have been as well.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of dynamics going on. There's a big gap from 6th grade to a senior, obviously. But to bridge that gap, you need high schoolers to reach down and say, hey.
So those middle schoolers then have someone to look up to, but those high schoolers are then given leadership opportunities. I'm a huge fan and proponent of giving students leadership opportunities.
Yeah.
You'll never become a leader if you're never given an opportunity to lead.
I agree.
And that's that's one of the best ways is to mentor, come alongside. I tried to institute a few times. It never panned out well, but a big brother, big sister type thing. Some of them hooked on to it. But yeah.
You tried.
I tried. That's what matters, right?
The intentions were there.
Yeah.
But even, like for middle schoolers that have seen the example of high schoolers, man, I want them to take elementary school kids and show them a few things, whatever opportunities that is at VBS or however they can, depending on how far along they come. And so, that's how I view student ministry is a growing up but a trickle down, for lack of a better term. I just
love
made
it.
that up, but it may not be a tagline officially.
Put it on a t-shirt.
Okay. Trickle down.
Maybe not.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or just right, grow up.
Grow and trickle.
Portland Student Ministry, First Baptist. So there's a lot to student ministry. There's a lot of need. There is a great need. I say a lot of people say they're the future of the church. They're not. They are the church now.
They are.
They are part of the church now.
Man, this is proven by Apple, all these big brand companies. The demographics are after are this generation right now because they understand that. They're not the future. They are making waves now. They're setting the trends. They're influencing and so they're targeted, honestly. They're targeted by all kinds of ideologies and
it's a very hard time to live as a Christian, but especially for students.
I agree. And so they need more than ever the gospel and people sharing truth with them. So in student ministry, I'm sure that you have come across a fail or two. Yes?
Yeah. So we'll hold this for the next episode.
Okay.
So you'll have to tune in next week.
The ultimate cliffhanger.
Yes. This has been Student Ministry Part 1. Tune in next time and you'll hear some funny fails from student ministry. But you'll also hear a little of the purpose of student pastor.
Yeah.
So thank you for listening to our heart a little about students and student ministry. I pray that you'll plug into student ministry and really invest in lives. But thank you for tuning in to the First Word Podcast. This is Jacob.
And Mike.
God bless.
Bye.